Anne-Laure Gassin is the head of communication in EFSA. And I worked with Anne-Laure for 6 years as a board member and then as a chair. And how she looks so young, I don't know. She must be on some special medication, because it's a highly stressful job, because every time the phone rings, it could be just a massive emergency. She has a great team with her and she leads the team. She's very calm. I don't know how she does it, but lessons learned from 10 years of experience in food-related risk communication. Just a simple talk for you, Anne-Laure. Look, we thank you for coming, and over to you.
Okay, well, welcome everyone, and thank you very much, Patrick, for that very kind and lively also introduction. I just want to say before speaking about EFSA and our work in risk communications, just how fortunate we feel and are to have been able to participate, to be involved in this project. This project really is a gold mine for risk communicators. Risk communicators are always looking for evidence and findings to help guide the decisions that indeed we have to make every day, sometimes at a very short call. It's really great to have this opportunity to have this very robust evidence base to help inform our work with these latest findings. It's also been a pleasure, so being involved as through EFSA as a stakeholder, but also through our advisory forum working group, the national food safety agencies and the member states with whom we work have also had the opportunity to interact with the food risk team, and the exchange between scientists, academics, practitioners, I hope has been fruitful. Certainly on our side has been very, very, very positive. So in this presentation, what I'd like now to do is to briefly outline indeed how we approach our risk communications mandate. I appreciate some of you will be very familiar with this, but others not. To try to glean from our experience, learnings, results, and importantly to look forward and discuss with you, and we'll have further opportunity throughout the day to talk about the challenges that we have, but I think that we all have in this very important area. So EFSA has, as you know, a very clear risk communications mandate laid down in its founding regulation, and we reflect this in our communication strategy through this mission statement, which sounds very easy: to provide appropriate, consistent, accurate, timely communications on food safety issues. Indeed, in practice, it can be at times quite challenging. EFSA's role in risk communications, well, clearly we're only part of the story. We're the risk assessor, and risk communications is a joint responsibility of risk managers, of the risk assessors, a wide variety of actors involved here. Our communications, as our science, is independent of the political and regulatory process, but our communications needs to be closely coordinated with the risk managers so that in the end, stakeholders, interested parties, the end consumer receives a consistent and coherent message. And that is an ongoing, I think, challenge and opportunity. We provide support also to the Commission when there are, in emergency situations, when there are urgent requests for scientific advice, such as the ones that Patrick mentioned earlier. We operate in an open and transparent manner and engage in dialogue with our stakeholders. Now, over the last 10 years, EFSA has contributed through its scientific work in providing, strengthening the scientific evidence base for decision-making by risk managers on food and feed safety. These are some of the areas in which we have provided advice to help protect Europe's 500 million consumers from a wide range of risks which can be associated with the food chain. We also play a major role in EU rapid responses to food-related and animal health issues. We were tried and tested early on in EFSA's life. I don't know if you remember the isolated case of BSE in a goat in 2004. Avian influenza, chemical contaminants in the food chain, Q fever outbreak in the Netherlands, and indeed EFSA played also an important role in helping to identify the source, the origin, and to trace back to the origin of the E. coli outbreaks in Germany and France. As EFSA has a very, very broad mandate, as we know, and through the years, indeed, we have public interest in EFSA's work has grown, media interest has grown, and you see this reflected and illustrated here in these headlines. How do we approach our risk communications mandate? Well, just as Patrick mentioned in the Food Risk Consortium, we need to understand how consumers themselves relate to food, how they perceive food, what risks they associate with food. And we've been fortunate to be able to commission in 2005, 2010, a Eurobarometer to look at this issue. Also, the level of confidence and trust that consumers have in the food chain and in the ability of authorities to protect them from any risks. And Professor George Gaskell, later in the program, will be talking much more in detail with an analysis of these results with respect to trust. Our daily work as communicators is to bridge between science, the world of science, and that of our stakeholders and ultimately the consumer. And that's a challenge. And we'll come back to that as EFSA continues to also seek to produce clear and more meaningful communications. Coherence, promoting coherence in risk communications, well, this is a key part of our mandate from our founding regulation. And here we're very fortunate to work closely with the national food safety agencies. We have a dedicated working group of our advisory forum that meets regularly, that exchanges not only on what are the hot issues on our plates, but also how are we taking on our risk communications mandate, what tools are we using, what works, doesn't work, and that capacity of exchanges is really very powerful. Who does EFSA communicate with? This is an often recurring question. We do not attempt to communicate directly to Europe's 500 million consumers for a wide range of reasons because of different food habits, risk perception, food supply chain issues, etc., because of the very good work that is done also by the national food safety agencies who are in direct contact with consumers. Of course, all of our information is available on the EFSA website, and we direct our communications to that inner circle, to the risk managers, the risk assessors, the stakeholders who are involved in these issues. Of course, we can be contacted also to respond to requests from individuals who are concerned by these issues, and the social media environment and changes in that environment, of course, has an impact on the mechanisms, tools, and channels that we use in this area. In 2011, when we reviewed our communication strategy, we undertook to develop a more thematic approach in our communications. These are some of the areas in which we've taken this on. We've developed the work most in the zoonoses area, and I'll come back to that. The reason we did this was in an endeavor to be more meaningful, be more relevant, provide more context, help people to identify, well, how does this scientific output from EFSA fit into a broader picture? Our communications work in numbers. I won't go through this in detail, but this illustrates both the outreach and the outputs that we've had over the last years. What have we achieved? Well, every 6 years, EFSA, as other EU agencies, is subject to an external evaluation, and these are some of the findings with respect to risk communications. Where, in the main, there's a positive view from those who were interviewed and provided input that we have made a positive contribution to risk communications in the EU. Our communications is seen as being clear enough to help inform decision-making processes, but there is a need for greater clarity of messages and languages for broader outreach. And we receive this message also from our immediate stakeholders. So this is something that we certainly take very seriously. There's a recommendation that we continue to improve our existing tools and that we strengthen also our role in facilitating coherence in communications, particularly when urgent scientific advice is needed. So what have we learned? Well, the importance of understanding, anticipating, addressing the differences that exist in risk perception in the EU. I'll come back to that with an illustration. Importance also of keeping people informed about our work. It's not only about what are the ultimate findings, but particularly when we're addressing a very topical issue. People want to know that we are working on it, at what stage we are, what they can access, etc. So keeping people apprised as the work progresses. Focusing on impact, that's a challenge when you're a risk assessor because the impact often comes with the risk management. So we need to work closely with the risk managers in order to help people understand the relevance of the scientific findings. What do they mean for me? We need, as Patrick was mentioning, some stories travel more than others, and we need to invest in public health issues. There are some issues, such as foodborne diseases, where we're not able to get sufficient traction and interest, leaving aside the crisis issues, of course. We need to address uncertainties clearly in the science, in the communication, provide rapid response, foster dialogue, work in close cooperation. In terms of our overall attitude, well, what have we learned? Well, a bit of humility. I mean, science cannot answer all of citizens' concerns, societal concerns, and that is key. As Oscar Wilde says, also the importance of being earnest, walking the talk, building trust through greater transparency and engagement. So a couple of illustrations just to illustrate on a topical issue like aspartame. This is an example of where we can't think of the word now in English, in a determined way decided up front to follow a very open and transparent approach as we undertook this mandate. Because of the level of interest in the reevaluation, because of the level of controversy that has surrounded this sweetener for years. And so we undertook a very open approach, publishing also on the EFSA website, not only our mandate, how we were going to carry out the work, but the data that were going to be considered, so that people knew what are the data that are going to be assessed by the panel. We consulted publicly. It's the first time that EFSA has consulted publicly on an opinion on a regulated substance. We regularly consult on risk assessment methodology, but this is one where we felt we really need to ensure that we have the broadest input possible, in addition to calls for data, etc. We held hearings, and the final opinion is expected in November. But just to illustrate differences in risk perception, when we look at the Eurobarometer results and concerns about food additives, we see that this is a number one concern in Poland and Romania. When we look at the media environment, however, and we look at EFSA-related media coverage on food additives, we don't see the same picture. We see that countries where we have the most coverage are countries like France, Belgium, Germany, the UK, and even the United States. So it's important as communicators that we understand the environment in which we are working. Zoonoses, this is the area where we have developed furthest, in fact, what we call this thematic approach. So these are, in fact, come to life online through what we call in focus campaigns. And we bring together here different types of content, different formats, so that the expert knows here's the opinion. A media might access a press release. Someone who wants to watch a video and understand, well, what is antimicrobial resistance, they can watch that. So people can access the information that they need. We also have engaged in cooperation here with the Commission in Communications. This was in 2011, where we, through the publication of our summary report with ECDC, the Commission then also communicated through a press release highlighting the important achievements that had resulted after 5 years in reducing human salmonellosis cases. In terms of results, though, when we look at this thematic approach on zoonoses, we see that we've had success in driving traffic online. People who come on also to the EFSA website in this area, they tend to stay longer, they tend to look at more pages. On the media side of things, leaving aside crisis, this is not an area where we've seen significant growth. And this is an area where we feel that we need indeed more actors involved in order to support awareness raising about the importance of this issue to public health. Trust in science, trust in scientific risk assessment. The Eurobarometer results show us that scientists, food safety agencies are rather well placed as trusted sources of information on food-related risks. And EFSA has a responsibility to promote trust in scientific risk assessment. But we also know that rational solutions are not always perceived as being enough in building trust. And this, what is needed in this context is we come back again to the need for more meaningful communication. Sometimes the communication can be too abstract, so people don't understand, well, how is this relevant for me? How is this protecting me? We need to ensure that we're framing, that we're contextualizing the work that we're doing. We need to engage as much as possible stakeholders in the risk assessment process, allow people to see into the process, to better understand the process. And when criticisms arise, to stand up to that scrutiny and explain. And that is very much how we are approaching our work. How does that translate into communications? Through online, we are wanting, through the website and online tools, animations, to better explain risk assessment workflow. How do we select experts, for instance, for working groups? We try to webcast where we can meetings. This carries costs, so that has to be looked at carefully. We've opened up some of our panel meetings to observers, as you know, and we're engaging right now with our stakeholder platform in an important transparency initiative where we are aiming to define how can we make data that is considered in risk assessment available more broadly to the public, taking into account, of course, legal constraints. Other tools, we have this series that we're calling the Understanding Science video series, where we're wanting to explain the science behind our work. Also communications and policies. The last one is our legal manager, who in 3 or 4 minutes is explaining the very robust policy that we have in place to ensure the independence of our scientific work. Social media carries challenges, carries opportunities. We're present on Twitter and YouTube. We're cautious approach, and we will continue to learn, including from the food risk findings as we move forward. So looking forward now, and just wrapping up here, looking forward at future developments in communications, how do we see this? Well, we certainly want to take up this challenge of needing to provide clear, more meaningful communications. We want to give all interested parties easy access to the information that they need, so we're going to be thinking quite hard, we already are, but harder, in the weeks and months to come at new tools, new opportunities, potentially new audiences who today know less about us, but really our work is quite relevant to them. Thinking here, for instance, of the nutrition area, public health nutritionists who may not be aware of the very important work that's being done right now on dietary reference values, for instance. We need to focus more on impact so that people better understand the relevance of the work, the added value of the scientific work, and this we can't do alone. So we need to do this together with the risk managers and other partners, strengthening our coordination, reinforcing dialogue and engagement with stakeholders. So in closing, just to highlight a document which is in your pack, through our working group on communications with the member states, we've developed risk communication guidelines. This is a living document. It includes case studies. We'll continue to update this. But this is really meant to be a tool for practitioners, and we hope that you will find this also interesting. And of course, this will be enriched by the findings from the Food Risk Consortium. So with that, I think I've kept to time. I will leave it at that. I think we'll have probably questions later, but thank you very much for your attention, and wishing everybody really an excellent day. Thank you.